Afternoon all. Let's have a look at another David Bronstein game now, and he did have a particular interest in playing against computers. I was reading the wiki page about him, which is quite fascinating as well, and he also had particular interest in certain types of endgames. But as I said before, a lot of opening innovations have his name to him. There's a link in the previous video to this video by Qxc8, which is also actually on YouTube. Which talks about his win against GM Walter Brown, and he kind of honours Walter Brown by playing into one of his pet lines and really smashed him up. Bronstein's dynamism, seeking trump cards, I think basically, he's an artist, and I think I'm starting to realise my own tendencies are on the artist side rather than the scientific side. And so when Bronstein is playing against a computer, I'm reminded of Botvinnik and Qe2, who, Botvinnik was into computer programming, and Qe2 was into this book which was put into his name about candidate move trees. And I don't really like, the scientific aspects of trying to make thinking into a kind of scientific form, but rather an artistic form, where you can create beautiful games. And part of that is almost putting your own it's putting your own position at risk, because by creating trump cards, you're giving the opponent cards as well to play with. You're splitting the imbalances with the opponent from the start of the game. And it's interesting to see the King's Gambit in this game being used to smash an early computer. So this was the M20 computer at the Moscow Mathematics Institute, played in 1963. So E4. And we have, after e5, the King's Gambit, so the computer gobbles up the pawn. And after knight f3, knight f6, we see already the centre's quite good for white. And this knight, what is it really doing on g4? It's going to come to try and rob white of the dark square bishop, maybe, if d4. So that's the evil computer plan, as well as materialistically now protect the f4 pawn. So, the artist, of course, sees above these things. Materialism is a deadly sin, potentially. Material is just, as Kasparov would say, there's material, there's time, and there's quality. These three dimensions of chess interrelated. So who cares that white's a pawn down here? He's getting better quality pieces, better control of the centre, majestic e4 square in conjunction with g5. That's even going to be more effective than a knight because of this f6 square being, drastically weakened, permanently weakened by g5. So materialism can backfire. We already have the seeds of black's defeat already in this position. So knight c3, again, moving a piece again now with knight e3. Okay, it gets rid of the bishop, which the computer might have evaluated as slightly better to a knight. But the computer's position looks absolutely terrible, and it gobbles again. And here, it's just ignored. Just knight e4, just go into f6 and start challenging black's king safety straight away. So it's great and nostalgic that engines could be beaten in such a manner. And this position is already looking very, very promising. So another move with that knight. Let's not bother moving any other pieces. The computer's algorithm is just focused on material, not so much king safety at that point in time in 1963. So we have knight f6 check now. And king e7. Okay, so here now David played bishop d2, and the bishop could be potentially useful on this diagonal. Actually, I just want to check my volume control and back in one moment. Okay, so bishop d2. So the bishop might be useful on this diagonal, and the computer gobbles up more material. Knight takes c2. It obviously hasn't read about Rowson's 7 deadly sins and materialism being a deadly sin. So king f2, the other rook's taken. And now we have knight d5 check. The king is able to be kicked around a little bit. And after king e6, queen c4, threatening nasty double checks now. With knight takes c7 or knight takes f4. Two double check opportunities. And after b5, in fact, another checking opportunity is taken. Knight takes g5. So undermining black's pawn chain and decoying the queen away from c7, which is actually the more relevant aspect. So knight takes g5. Forget about undermining the pawn chain. So queen takes g5, knight takes c7 check. So the king's pushed back, and now we have knight d5 check. And now we finally use one of the double check opportunities. Knight takes f4 double check. Okay. So after king e7, again, it looks as though, what is David doing here? Well, he's actually exposing now an attack on the queen. So if he can potentially win the queen now if black's not careful. And after king e8, and in fact, here he is completely winning now. Queen takes c8 check. But the queen retreats. However, this isn't good enough now because knight c7 check. And the king is forced to move. But this allows now two really vicious checks, which are, I think, both equally winning. But bishop b4 check is chosen. And now bishop takes d6, which leads to a pretty little finish. After queen takes d6, queen e8, mate. So we have here actually a chess game, yes. We have here a work of art. That's what we really have. There's ways of beating computers, and there's ways of beating computers beautifully. And this was a beautiful finish. So let's have a look. King's Gambit. And the funny thing is, you would think, oh, you know, David only beat computers like this. Actually, some human opponents, he was sacrificing rooks. And maybe we should have a look at those games where, you know, he was getting to the opponent's king, very resourceful tactics. So he's not minding material loss. He's creating beautiful works of art. And as a creative player, I think we should have a look at more of his games than previously. Because, you know, in one World Championship also, you know, he could have so easily had beaten Mikhail Botvinnik. It's only because of this having to lead the match. You know, it was an equal score against Mikhail Botvinnik, and otherwise he would have been world champion if he had just won one of his last two games. But you know, in his last game it was a draw, and I think he really didn't want to become world champion because of the bureaucracy associated with it. It wasn't a good fit with his personality, and also apparently he was under some psychological pressure. But he didn't really go into detail of what, you know, the specifics of that. So there's some interesting controversies around his life and his World Championship challenge with Mikhail Botvinnik, and I'm tempted actually to order his book from Amazon, The Sorcerer's Apprentice. So I'm highly tempted, because this book that I've got, what I'm worried about is the game selections in it. I'm not sure they're the greatest games, and we can only see that from what David himself would have recommended. So that's why I'm really tempted to have a look at his own book. I know it's terrible. I haven't got it in my book library at the moment. I don't know how many of you guys have got it in your library. Please let me know in the comments of this video if you've got The Sorcerer's Apprentice. So anyway, this interesting game, which is a kind of work of art, nostalgic look back at how computers used to play so materialistically that was really the only thing in their you know, evaluation function, and their depths of search wasn't that bad either. So they probably, you know, were looking at thousands of positions instead of, you know, like millions now. I don't know even if it was thousands. So queen e2, so the computer starts gobbling, kind of happy, but its king safety is all shot to pieces, and basically David doesn't mind losing the other rook. You know, what's material when the ultimate goal of the game is actually to get to the king. So knight d5 check, queen c4, menacing double check opportunities, b5 trying to get some respite. Okay, the queen can't go there, that would be a terrible blunder, justifying the knight on the rim, because knight takes b3. But instead, here, decoying the queen now, away from c7. So going well over probably the computer's horizon now, with this knight sack, completely unexpected. Knight takes g5. And after queen takes, it seems, you know, white's position is already kind of crushing. It'll be interesting just to do a third pass through this game with Ribka kind of evaluation, actually. So we have here the double check, and now queen takes c8, knight c7, and there's two ways it seems to win now, and the pretty continuation is chosen. So a Ribka evaluation, would Ribka actually say black's already worse quite early on? Just quickly show you this. We'll talk about this. Here, okay, after Nf3 Nf6, I think already this isn't so hot for black after knight g4. Rybka's already giving it as a slight advantage to white now, 0.33. So computers nowadays are highly wary about this sort of position, and it gets absolutely atrocious. This next move, no computer self-respecting engine would play g5. Already, you know, white's advantage is very clear to deep Rybka 4. So after knight c3, black just makes things more and more bad. Although knight e3 is actually a candidate move in Rybka's list here, but the position looks a bit terrible now already. And white is just getting the black king out now. And the evaluation here, after bishop d2, now this is a surprise, which I wasn't expecting to be able to tell you. But here, apparently the correct way to play this is taking, and then knight takes g5, with a clear advantage to white of 1.05. But David, by playing actually bishop d2, momentarily there at a certain depth, it looked as though black was given an advantage. So here, in fact, it looks as though this is given as an equal position, or even now, king f2 at depth 10. I don't know if I've got a sick version of Rybka or something, but it's giving black an advantage with bishop g7. But maybe not knight takes a1, it's not mentioned. Here actually white's getting an equal position again of 0. But after this next move, king e6, I think that was a little bit risky. The king should have gone back to e8 here apparently. Okay, but even on king e8, I wonder if there was a winning continuation for white. This is interesting actually as a challenge to see if there was something here. So say bishop b4 check. Don't tell me this was really unsound. Okay, this is interesting that ed6 is not finishing black off because there's an escape now to g6. White's given up too much material, I think, here. So maybe, you know, he's taken some risks here. So it's good actually the computer maybe didn't play this continuation here of king e8. Maybe it had some drawing chances. So let's go back here. So after bishop b4 check. Let's go into this variation again. Knight d5 check. The king brought out for some reason, a bit too confident. So king e6, and this started to give white a massive advantage. So king e8 was really a very critical, embarrassing computer blunder here. And so not playing king e8. So king e6 instead. So queen c4, introducing a lot of dynamic possibilities and double checks and decoying possibilities like knight takes g5 to get to c7. So we have b5, knight takes g5 check, and it's Rybka's giving that a forced mate in 9 actually, this position. Forced mate in 9. So knight d5 check, knight f4 double check, and then again with the check. So the damage has been done, that this diagonal has been opened up for the bishop by munching on f4. And here, just to confirm, yeah, there's either bishop b4 check, that's actually a forced mate in 3. So that's the most accurate continuation here. Bishop g5 is also very strong, of course, you know, winning the queen. So bishop b4 check, and then we get this beautiful, you know, mate. Okay, so the artist is there. I think he's called his book The Sorcerer's Apprentice to share his magical wand, how he used the magics, the wands in his games, which is evident just from looking at the notable games at chessgames.com. Have a look at those and the rook sacrifices. Very interesting games. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.